Hello everyone and welcome to this new tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to talk about what things are and how things works. What is Unity actually? When you open Unity for the first time, you'll start a new project from File, New Project, and you choose the name and the destination folder. Now, if you start a new project, you will have a new window like this one with a lot of smaller windows. What are these windows? We have the scene window where you can see everything as 3D. You can move by clicking the right mouse button and then WASD as any first person shooter games like Counter-Strike or something like that. So after that you have the hierarchy menu, all the game objects in the scene. We have now only main camera and a light, directional light. We will talk about that later. We have the project window. We have the console window. The project window contains the files you have in your project. Now it's empty. This is the assets folder, and it's empty for the time being. We have the inspector menu. I think it's the most important menu in Unity. So what are these things? What are these things? Now that's what I want to talk about. Actually, we have a camera. What is a camera? How does the camera work? What is a directional light? What's the difference between main camera and directional light? And what makes the camera camera and the light light? So let's add a new cube. We go to game object, 3D object, cube. Now we have a small cube, as you can see. Let's move near the cube. Here it is, and it's 3D. It's amazing. Okay, so why this is a cube and this is a camera? What makes it a cube? How Unity translate this game object into a cube? Well, actually these things. In the inspector menu that makes the cube a cube. I will explain that in more details. Let's create an empty game object. Here we go. We have an empty game object. This is empty game object. We can't see anything, just these arrows. And these arrows just change the position of this game object. We have only a transform component in the inspector menu for this game object. What is a transform component? Actually, every game object has a transform component. It contains the position of the game object, the rotation of the game object. As you can see, it's rotating, and it's rotating on the y-axis, it's rotating on the z-axis, and we have the scale, the size of the game object. We can't see anything now because it has nothing to scale. So what's the difference between this game object and the cube? Actually, in the cube we have a transform, a cube, mesh filter, a box collider, mesh renderer. What are these things? As we told you before, transform sets the position, the rotation, as you can see, and the scale gets bigger, and on all axes. Now, if I get this new game object, let's add a mesh filter, mesh filter, and now we have mesh filter with non-mesh. Now I have to choose a mesh. Let's choose the cube mesh. We press on this little circle right here and we can choose. These are the default meshes in Unity. You can import any mesh from 3D Max or from any other program. Let's choose the cube mesh. Okay, we still can't see the mesh. Why? We can't see the mesh because it's not rendered. So let's add a mesh renderer, mesh renderer. And now we can see a small box right here. As you can see, it's weird color. Okay, so why this box is white and this box is purple or whatever? Because we don't have a material, the skin of the box. We need a skin for the box, and we can add the materials here in the mesh renderer materials. We can add multiple materials by changing the size of the materials. Let's say 2. We can add now 2 materials, but for the time being, let's stick to 1 material. And now let's choose the default material of Unity. We have default diffuse and default mate. We'll talk about these things all in details later, so don't worry if you don't understand things fully now. And as you can see, when we added the material, we can see a material part here down, and we can change it later. But now we have an identical box. We can change its scale, we can change its rotation, we can change the position, everything. Okay, so what is a collider? We have a box collider. The collider actually is the physical body of the box. For example, when the box hit the ground, the collider hits the ground, not the box. Now if this new cube hits the ground, it will go through the ground because it hasn't any collider. So we can add a collider, but for the time being we don't need a collider. Now I can change this game object, the new one, the empty, to calendar mesh, and as you can see, it changed it to calendar. Sphere mesh, and it's a sphere now. Same we can do to the cube. Calendar, and it's a calendar. Although I started from a cube or a sphere game object, now let's start with a sphere game object. Where is the sphere? It's inside the cube. That's a cylinder. Let's take it outside. Okay, so if I change the mesh of the sphere, I can change it to anything else. Now the sphere is a cube. And let's check also the light. Light, we have 4 kinds of light in Unity: directional light, point light, spotlight, and area light. We will talk about them in details later. But let's start a new point light. As you can see, it has a transform component and the light component. Now let's change the light, the color of the light. Now we have a beautiful red color. Let's raise the intensity. As you can see, we can see the color reflecting on the game objects. Now if I move it to here, the color will change in real time. The light, sorry. So the difference between this game object and this point light is the light component. If I move this sphere near to the other game objects, okay, here we go, and let's add a light component to the sphere itself. Add component, rendering light. Now the sphere itself is a light. Let's change the color to blue so we can notice the difference, and let's raise the intensity and the range. And as you can see, now the ball itself is emitting light. It's a sphere and a light because it has a sphere mesh component and a light component. And I can add, for example, a camera component, and it will be a camera I will see from the sphere itself. So this is what makes game objects in Unity. Actually, what are these? These are scripts that changes the look of the object or the behavior of the object. So when you add a new script to any game object, you're actually adding a component to the game object. You can create whatever you want and add to the game object. We will talk about adding scripts later. So in this lesson, the main important thing to understand is the components and how Unity translates the components. So if you start any game object, you can change it later. For example, I will start a new spotlight, but in the spot I can change directional, and it's a directional light now. Instead of directional, I can change to point, and it's a point light. Or I can delete the light component and add a mesh filter and a mesh renderer, and I can add a sphere mesh, and I can add one material, and as you can see, it's a sphere now. So I changed the light game object to a sphere game object by changing its components. Now let's talk about the game window. The game window actually show you the real game. When you start the game, you will go to the game window, and as you can see, it looks like that because the camera in the scene is looking from here. You can see a camera preview right here. If I change the position of the camera, up, down, left, right, and back and forth, now if I start the game, it will go automatically to the game window. As you can see, I can see the game objects right there. The console window show you the messages, the errors in the game. Okay, now let's stop the game. I will talk about these tools. Now we said every game object has a transform. So let's move, for example, to the sphere, this sphere. I can move it by choosing these arrows. I can move it. Now, if I choose these, I can rotate the ball in every direction. If I choose scale, I can scale it, and as you can see, the numbers in the transform area are changing. So it's getting bigger now, and I can change it from here. And we have also the component menu from here. You can add any component to any game object, or you can add it from here, from add component. Next time we'll talk about the most important components in Unity. We'll talk about the rigid body, the physics, and we will start to do a small project. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, please don't hesitate to write them in the comments down below, and please subscribe and share this video to help me continue with this series. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.